Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. I'm your host, Tom Dutta. Are we ever in for a blockbuster interview today? My goodness, I've got a guest in the green room. She's going to knock your socks off. Just an incredible story. And, well, first of all, let me ask you a favor. If you want to just click on the subscribe button there, we are on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And, well, by giving it a like, we're going to honor this story. We're going to get it out there. We're going to be able to do more of these. Now, I want to tell you, this will be produced as a international podcast. We're now in 17 countries. This will go out in about a week and a half. We're also going to relaunch a video premiere of it. Really excited. So before I bring the guests on the screen, I was thinking about this, everybody, me and how I do my show, and I want to do something very different today. But I got to ask you, it's a bit of a secret. It's kind of something from the Twilight Zone. And, well, all right. So in doing my research and working this up, I came across this video. And I was thinking, like, man, do I show the guest the video? Because it kind of involves her and a little bit about me. And then I thought, well, sometimes the element of surprise. So here's the thing. You can't tell her. But it's going to be the second video we look at, all right? And you have to promise me that you stay till the very end of this production, because the whole story together is going to give you what we've been looking for here. So I'm going to play that, and we're going to ask her to watch it with me, and I want you to just see what her reaction is. I'm taking a risk, so if you don't see me on air after today, well, you're probably going to know that it didn't work. But so that's the way we're going to do it, all right, everybody? So I'm going to bring her out of the green room. She's been patiently waiting. Welcome to the show, Suzie Newell.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, I know you're probably wondering, what is he doing over there? What's he what's he conspiring on? I want to just tell everybody a little bit about you, Suzie. So you remember when we first were introduced, I asked you a question, and what did you do? You did something.
I wrote back a transparent story, which is what I do. Don't ask me a question you don't want to hear the answer to.
Yeah. So, boy, did I ever get an answer. So, everybody, I never do this to this extent on the show, but this is meaningful because I'm so honored and proud of our guests for doing this. I always ask that the show narrative, the hero's journey, as you know, I always ask the guest to, hey, what's the gut punches? What's the challenges along the way in your life? Because as a producer, I get the one pages that talk about how great I am and my work and my achievements. This one came in, and it's almost like in my gut, I had this feeling. So here's the question I asked. I said, why are you a fit for the narrative of the show? What's your big setbacks? What's your dark secrets? And so, as you said, Suzie, you wrote me a letter. So I'm going to read a little bit of this letter. Are you okay if I just read that out a bit?
Absolutely.
And, actually feel free to jump in if you have any feeling or emotion about it along the way. Make it two-way. But I'll start off by sort of getting into the background, the professional bio. And so Suzie has a doctorate specializing in coping mechanisms, everyone. Her work as a nurse, anesthesiologist on obstetric units in the epicenter of the opioid crisis exposed her to the day-to-day roadblocks people face. And not only those with a substance use disorder, her own journey began with a degree in political science working in social justice. While in Guatemala during the 500 Years of Renaissance campaign, she met a woman who inspired her to return to school and ultimately work in anesthesia. Now, Suzie, you've written this book, which we're going to talk about, which is the deep part of this story. It's called The Path 365. And I always smile when I read the second part, Daily Direction for Ladies and Mothers, Witches and Others. And I sort of said to myself, okay, am I the witch then? But I think it's for I'm in the others. And so, okay, all right. So there it is. So I think I kind of just politely called BS and said, okay, what's the real story? Let me ask you a question before I read a little bit of this letter you sent me. Do you start off when you're talking in your body of work, do you start off with your authentic story, or do you start off with your professional bio? What do you usually do?
Well, Usually there's not this kind of time to dig in. People have a 15-minute, so you have your
Yeah.
elevator speech, right, that you give people, and that's all they want to hear. So I was really excited actually when you reached out to me because I feel like authenticity is the most important part of my journey and being able to share this stuff. So no, I don't normally. I would, on a one-to-one level, personally, I can do that if it's warranted very easily, but not
Yeah,
here.
I mean, not live across the universe, which is where we're sort
Right,
of going, right? And
right.
so I'll get into the letter, everybody. But this was the interesting thing I was thinking about that across my body of work, especially in leadership business and in your profession, you're in business. Like so many people cover up their story. They think vulnerability is a weakness. And when I read this, and everybody, I want you just to hear a bit, and then chime in and send me some responses, everybody, when this gets released, if you really change the way you feel about Suzie, if she appears real to you. So she says, thanks, Tom, for creating such a meaningful platform. I always struggle with this next level of self-promotion. I'm authentic by nature and want to share my vision. This show is just a thing. So the question was, why do you fit the narrative, the hero's journey? What's the problem? I mean, what's the hidden stories? And so she told me that Suzie said she grew up in the 70s, upper middle class, Minneapolis, suburban home, 4.5 kids, 2 parents, Catholic, sacraments, love. And you get the picture, everybody. Pretty cool. Spent summers from the age of 9 with grandmother and cousins in Chicago. Dad quit drinking, so there's a first thread of a story there. I was 3. It was easier to list the people in my family who didn't have some issue with substances. And then she's quoted grandmother. Goes on to say that this is where my childhood fell from grace. For the next 10 years, my family suffered disaster after disaster. One sister had a car accident that landed her in a hospital bed for a year. She returned to college only to come home pregnant. She gave that baby up for adoption, started down a long journey of pain and mental health issues. But my dad's cancer returned. He died when I was 16. We had zero healthy tools for coping, since drinking and whatever other substance available were how we dealt with pain. I just want to stop there for a minute. I know this is emotional, but how do you feel putting yourself back in that moment in time, if that's where your life was?
Well, I think like the last few years have really opened my eyes to the fact that nobody had the idea of generational trauma, that you really don't have the tools because the person raising you doesn't have the tools. We don't give the next person the tools. It's very, you just don't have the capacity. So it's more, I'm more excited about the future. I'm more
Yeah,
excited about our next generation because they are getting the tools. They are learning how to deal with this stuff. So it's
absolutely.
less painful than it is excited, hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, everybody teaching moment there, less painful. But, when you go back and watch this again, just re-listen to what I just read and imagine yourself sitting in her shoes at that moment. And now look at what Suzie is today, how remarkable whatever your journey has been, we'll hear about. I don't know if I could have done that, but let's go a little further. Oh gosh, I gotta stop laughing. My other sister attempted suicide at one point, and I developed an eating disorder. Eventually, all my substance habits brought me to treatment at the age of 19 with a 2-liter bottle of vodka in one hand. My dad used to drink a lot, and I remember those 2-liter bottles. That's incredible. So, armed with treatment foundations from the 80s, I hit my life hard. I got a degree in political science. It took me to Guatemala, where I met a nurse anesthesiologist, came back and graduated. And then she says, spoiler alert, this isn't a good foundation for a marriage. Went back to school really? For a nursing degree. Got pregnant, had a baby, graduated, lost my mother, lost my grandmother, lost my best friend, moved to Ohio to be near my husband's family, leaving all of my support system behind. Found myself lonely, overworked, mother of a 1-year-old, trapped in a marriage to an unemployed, angry man who wouldn't even help with the yard work. The only thing saving me at this point was that I had taken up running. Everybody, when you hear some of those things I just read, are you kind of going inside yourself? That's my story. Suzie, is it probably a universal truth that in those bundle of words in there, that somebody's story's in there? What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so many people's story. Yeah, I just feel like I was lucky in how I landed.
Yeah. And so I'll just accelerate this letter here, and there's just a few more points, everybody. Uh, so I see things started to improve. She says, I got clean again. This time it was all more counseling, meditation work, more spiritual path. Life skyrocketed. I was active in my daughter's life. And she goes on to share more of the story. And I think this is a turning point. In 2017, I received that middle of the night phone call from my niece, Shannon, who was 5 months pregnant and my sister's first grandchild. I knew when I answered the phone that Kathy had overdosed. My sister, who had that accident, never stopped battling her resulting addiction to narcotics. I went home for the funeral and appropriately Irish drinking affair and looked around. I'm chuckling here. She says, only my brother and I were sober. That must have been something else. And I just want to riff with you on something I just read about the overdose. I have a friend who called me a couple of years ago and was asking me how to get to a Starbucks. And I was wondering why you sending me a message about getting to a Starbucks, which happened to be close to where I live, Susie. And turned out, I found out that a couple of days after that, they found his brother's daughter deceased in a restroom, and was an overdose. Uh, well, take us back in that moment when you got that call. Just tell us how that felt. What did you do?
Well, when you look at the phone at 3 in the morning and it's Shannon and I mean, I lost Kathy years before we physically lost her. She was 53, so she had a lifetime. She was
Yeah,
19 when she had her car accident. So she had a lifetime of this stuff back and forth and back and forth. Highly functional, most of her life. She had a master's degree in education. She was the head of the special ed department in her school district. She was admired and a good person, but she would fall off and go back to the narcotic using. And every time it got worse and worse and worse, the way this disease does. And when Shannon had called, I had already told Kathy until she was willing to get help and stay and be honest, because that was the problem. She wasn't being honest.
yeah.
Until she was willing to be fully honest, then she shouldn't call me anymore. So when I saw the phone, I knew she had died. I knew before I answered it, I knew exactly what the phone conversation was going to be. So
Oh my
anything
gosh.
else could have waited till the morning.
Uh, I'm so sorry for your loss. I mean, I can't compare an experience like that. It's got to be painful. One thing that popped into my mind, just knowing a little bit about where you came from, is didn't you feel that through your life you were dealing with so much of your own stuff that like some people just don't even have the capacity to deal with other family members' challenges. Yet here, from what you said, you were sort of one of those people who was resilient, right? You had that ability. How did you deal with that?
At that point, I had been sober long enough. I had been living what is now the Path 365,
Yeah,
what is now the book, for several years. I didn't understand fully what the neuroscience behind it was, but I really understood that I needed to keep on this path and that it was working for me. And I had lots of space at that point then. So it was and that was the question, like, how come I'm so lucky?
yeah, yeah,
And that's what really was the triggering point, was why me? Why am I so? You have that little bit of that survivor's guilt. Like,
yeah,
why did I
yeah,
get it?
yeah.
So
Uh, I just want to read the turning point, the rest of that, and then we'll talk about that book. Perfect cue to hold up the book in a minute. So in 17, so you talked about that, and my first day back to work, I placed epidurals in 3 active heroin users. Wow, I came back to my call room and cried. Why do some people get better? Why do we what do we do differently? I thought about my own journey, differences between my brother and my sisters. I knew I had to do something. I started a group for women, mothers who had substance abuse disorder in the hospital. I returned to university to finish my doctorate, focusing on coping mechanisms for women. I honed in on neuroscience, which we heard you say a minute ago. And behind those coping mechanisms, I saw clearly how many inadvertent affinity for a hippie lifestyle saved me. That's your hippie lifestyle just makes me laugh sometimes. Have to draw pictures in my mind. So let's get now into the actual book, because it was a perfect segue. Something that Suzie did to this journey to write this book, to me, is remarkable. Hold it up and just tell us the cover. Read it out loud there.
The
I go
Path
full screen.
365. Let's see.
Okay.
Daily direction for ladies, mothers, witches, and others.
All right. So I'm going to be dueling books here today. So I have it too. Everybody, this is just an awesome book. And, you know, I'm going to brag about it for a minute because you're so humble. I read the whole book, and what's really cool in it, and maybe you can tell us why you did it this way. There's these wonderful illustrations, and I have to admit, a lot of publishers won't do this because it's expensive, but it really makes the book enjoyable. And the last thing I didn't realize till I actually read it again was the way it's set out. There's like daily things in here. Tell us about why you wrote it that way.
Well, I've always loved the daily direction books that are available for alcoholics, right? So there's lots of alcoholic daily
Yeah.
direction books, and then there's lots of daily direction books for people with, you know, like who have found religion or have their path figured out. Like they already have kind of a prescription, and they have these daily books. But
Yeah.
I was talking to my husband basically, and I said, you know, and COVID had just started. And I said, you know, it would be nice if we had a daily direction book for everybody. Like, this neuroscience is good for everybody. We need to have something out there that gives people a step by step that isn't related to anything, so that
Yeah.
everybody has a choice.
Yeah.
So we had, it was COVID, and my daughter was home because she's a performing arts, had lived in New York for 7 years, and in 3 days lost everything and moved home, probably a little depressed, understandably.
Oh
And
my
she,
God. I was just going like, oh boy, I don't know if I'd be able to. Depressed isn't the word. Oh goodness.
yeah, oh yeah, it was something, and it was hard to be your mother and watch that too. So I had
Yeah.
that on my mind as well, and I said, and my husband looks at me and says, I might know someone who could write that, and I might also know someone who could help you set up the rest of it, because she had done a lot of production work, she had done a lot of
Yep.
creative directing. I mean, that's her forte. And so she put a team together, and I had said, the other thing I had said is, most of the books that I have seen are ugly, and I don't see people doing a lot with artwork and making it beautiful.
Yeah.
And so she got Frankie Tyrone, who's the artist, and Madeline Jana, she's my daughter, she was the creative director. And then we just started working with Mikey and Matt, and they did all the, you know, Madeline and Mikey did all the page placement and had me write the little words down and made it all very creative and beautiful looking. So I had this amazing team available to me basically because everyone was out of work. And it was COVID, and I was like,
the drill sergeant.
I was
think
terrible. I'm like, let's go.
I think that's one thing I honestly can say I love and admire about you is you've got drive. I mean, it's with the type of journey though, but there's different kinds of people, and some people can't, you know, separate emotion as much. And I think that says a lot about how you do medical work too, right? As an anesthesiologist. I'm just going to hold it up again on my end, but everybody, when we go this way, you've kind of written it with a passage, and then at the bottom, it's got a kind of a thing called intention, which I really like, right? What's an intention?
So the way it's set up is it's 365 days in a year. And then we did the math, and it doesn't work out evenly. So we did 364 days and then a bonus entry. And and it's actually 2 bonus entries, but it's a long story. So I wrote too many. And I guess that's not a long story. I just wrote too many. And so they decided to include them both. But it works out evenly to 28 sections and 13 entries a piece. So if you had like a 13-month year is the way, you know, it is, and then the extra one. So we have each section has artwork associated with it and a theme. And
Yeah.
then, and it's a loose theme. It's not very, very direct because I try to incorporate mind, body, and spirit into all of them. And so, for instance, one of them is your body is perfect. So that's a little more focused on body, but
Yeah.
every theme is incorporated throughout it, and it ends with that theme. So what you do is you have an introduction, which is here's the something for the day. Like I'll just open it randomly. Let your fear go, for instance. So that's like the one that I have. And then underneath it,
what page was that? What page is that in your book there?
That's page 131. So what I have after that is a little written thing that says easy for you to say. So underneath that, I always have either a quote or a snarky comment that's from me, or like me talking to me, right? Or you know, something underneath that's like either inspirational or snarky, something that makes you laugh. So I go back and forth between the two. And then you have kind of let's talk about it. So that's the whole entry for the day.
Sure.
And then the bottom is the intention right here. And the intention is really just how are you going to design your path for this? So that's what I'm really proud of, is that I don't care what you do. Here are the things that you have to focus on to get better or to improve your life, or and some of it's motivational, some of it is inspirational, some of it's simple mind, body, spirit. It's very much, and it's 365 entries, so there's a lot going on there. But the intention allows you to make it the way you want.
Yeah.
So that's what I love about the intention, is that it's not think this way. It's here's what are you going to do to think this way?
Yeah.
How are you going to make it to that point? So it allows people to be them.
Yeah, I like that. In you know, in my profession, being an executive and then coaching them, you know, you sort of empower me with choice in this book, which I really like. I just want to pull something to put on the screen here. Just hold on. If everybody's on audio, they wouldn't have seen that, but I've just picked up this. It's almost like a 10-pound ball of fat. Actually, I think you'll recognize because you're a professional in the medical area. This is a replica of a real life brain, and I'm just going to full screen me for a minute here for a purpose. So I ordered this, and you know, by the way, that's the brain. That's the brainstem connects to the spinal cord. So think about it when your kids are doing homework on their bed and putting all that pressure on their necks. That's really what's going on. But I was fascinating, and there's a really cool picture on the back of the book. It's you, and it says received your doctorate from University of Cincinnati. Tell us about how that occurred, and then what neuroscience really is. I know it's something to do with the brain, and why did you choose to study that?
So when I went back, it all goes back to the why did my stuff work? And I started with substance use disorder, which really hones in on dopamine. And so a lot of what my understanding comes from that perspective, dopamine and endorphins. Yeah. So they've shown that substance use disorder, people with substance use disorder have lower capacity to make dopamine originally. And then once you add a chemical to that, it shuts off their capacity to make dopamine, sometimes altogether. So all of their dopamine receptors can be silent, which means that they wake up in the morning feeling like the world is ending every morning. So that explains sometimes some of that crazy behavior. But we all have fluctuations in dopamine based on bad habits or based on habits that we've developed over time that just aren't that great. Maybe not bad, but like, so I had really developed these coping mechanisms for this meeting I was working on based on improving your ability to increase your dopamine. And then the endorphins are easy because everyone understands exercise and food. Our slant on that is exercise and food are not the goal. The goal is to get healthy, get your brain fitness healthy. And once you do that, you actually tend to lose weight then because you're just making better choices for yourself over time. So there's no diet plan in here. There's no exercise plan. But those will, there is a, hey, what are you going to do today? Or what are you going to incorporate in your life to increase your endorphins?
Yeah.
I don't care
That's
if you
pretty,
walk around the block once,
yeah.
just do something.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that's why I connect to you in the story and everything I've learned about you, because I'm not sure if you really know too much about my story, but I was, raised in a traumatic home. My dad was a commanding officer in the military, very violent. And what's interesting is I formed my own connection to things that kind of covered up that pain. And, I was, I guess, a student who got straight A's, and I was always putting my effort into school. And, it's funny, I never told this before, but, I would live in my room at home. I had a 2-story house. We were fortunate. We lived in a middle income neighborhood, but built the house. But my room was downstairs. And so I had a paper route at age 12. And every kid in the neighborhood, Susie, had a paper route, but mine had 150 papers when theirs had 30. So I would get up at 5 in the morning and ride my 10-speed up and down hills with 150 papers on my, like, one this way, one that way bags. And then it's kind of sad because I became homeless at age 12 when my parents divorced, and the whole family was destroyed. But I used to buy myself a lot of stuff, and so I bought stereo equipment. I used to buy tons of vinyl records and all. And it's really interesting what you said, because now that I understand a bit about the dopamine thing, every time I would get something, it was like it was this rush. It made me
Yeah,
feel good, and
absolutely.
yeah, and that's why I love your knowledge you're passing on us, because I don't think a lot of people know that. But isn't it true that dopamine too is created in anticipation of reward, not necessarily at the reward?
Yeah, the habit is what creates
The
it,
habit,
right? Yeah.
yeah. So to go back to my
Well, it doesn't
stories,
create it actually. It's the habit that replaces
I
your
see.
natural ability to make dopamine. So
Gotcha.
the dopamine, if you make it in a natural way, then
Yeah,
you don't have these exhausted dopamine that you're hyper,
I see.
creating them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would it be fair to say that you and I, or everybody, has their own sort of levels of
Hmm.
these
Yeah,
brain chemicals? And so
absolutely.
if so I'm going back to my story. If I was I was also addicted to Slurpees and and O. Henry bars, just so you
Sugar.
know, sugar.
Yeah.
But isn't it true that if you get addicted to that, you keep going back and wanting more? But doesn't that make it harder for you to maintain that level of high the next time? In other words, you
Well,
have to
so
keep.
what you're doing is what you're doing is replacing.
I see.
Sugar will replace your ability to make it, because it's replacing it. It's creating the high.
I
So when
see.
you create the high yourself through these chemicals, your body goes, oh, I don't need to we're going to shut all these down. We're going to shut them down. So then
Yeah.
you have a crash that's much harder the next day. So everybody can relate to this when they think about the night they went out drinking, or maybe
Yeah.
they drank too many Slurpees, and the next day they're like, I just feel so depressed,
Yeah.
because your dopamine doesn't realize it needs to light up again. It's like, well, get me some more of that sugar or that
Wow.
wine. Like, get me some
So,
more of that and I'll feel better.
so as you're saying that, because my mind riffs in so many directions, that thing about your the 2 liter, and that at that moment where you went into treatment and sort of to change that, is it like withdrawal? What was that like? Must have been pretty crazy.
So my mother is just classic 1950s, just so denial is everything. We do not talk about our problems. Absolutely are not
Yeah,
going to talk about this.
I
She
have
just,
one of
and I
those.
don't blame her. She was a lovely woman. She was
Yeah,
perfect in so many ways, but
it's a generational
mental
belief, I
health,
think.
absolutely. Mental health was not her thing. And she was like, "You're not going to dream a treatment." She's like, "Just stop drinking." I'm like, "Mom, I can't stop drinking." I'm shaking and horrid. 2 liters of, I mean, I've been drinking a 2-liter bottle of vodka a day. People don't believe that. They're like, "You were 19." I'm like, "Who was watching me? Nobody."
All right,
I
come on.
was
How
just
I gotta
floating
go there.
around
I
like
I gotta go. I gotta go there because we watch Hollywood movies. When you say drinking 2 liters, were you like chugging it? How did you do that?
It would depend. So if anybody's from the 80s, so remember the very fine juices, the bottles of very fine juice were my favorite way to drink it all day long. So I'd pour half
Oh,
of
I
that
see.
out and pour the vodka in, and just keep pouring it in. And then at night I would chug it down. And sometimes, I mean, I remember one day in particular, I mean, it was gosh, I was 19. You think of how young that is.
Yeah.
And I just got home. And mind you, I was not drinking age. So I had someone else's ID, but of course I looked like I was 50 at the time because my face was just like
Yeah.
puffed out to here and I looked horrid.
Can't
So a lot of
imagine.
people didn't even question. So didn't have my bottle and I had to go get it. And I was just sick and I was shaking and I was like ready to throw up. And I get home and I'm shaking like this. And I remember just putting the vodka in my mouth just to get rid of that
Wow.
feeling.
Yeah.
And I still remember that. I mean, that was, 35 years ago, or how old I can't
Sure.
do math. Let's see, a long time ago.
Yeah.
35 years, yeah. And I still remember that feeling of just that. And I remember thinking, this is awful. And that was probably a week or two before I went into treatment. And
Yeah.
my mother's sitting behind me, I'm sure. And I think I realized it's telling the story really recently. Like I didn't even think about it until very recently. And my mother was sitting behind me going, I
Wow.
know she was. I know she told those people, my suburban white girl daughter did not do all of the things that she's saying she did. And so they put me in a regular floor. They put me in
Yeah.
treatment on a regular floor without detoxing me. And I went into full-blown DTs that night, like shaking and sick, and like I walk out of the unit, I'm just
Wow.
completely a mess. And they're like, took me right into, get help and put me on
Yeah.
all sorts of anti-seizure medications. And yeah, I was a mess.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I know it's painful to reshare that. And by the way, everybody, when you do the audio podcast, you won't see the zombie figure. She just did that zombie thing. But I think you got
She was shaking like crazy.
another role in a movie there. I'm producing a film. And by the way, my film, I might have told you that my book is being made into film. My film company's in Ohio.
Oh, that's awesome.
Believe it or not, probably not far from you. So we got to talk about that. Maybe we'll get you in the
Yes.
film somehow. I just got to riff with you on another story that came to mind. It's funny how I think is it true? And from what you know about brain science, that we remember, like, why do we remember certain things more than others? Is it because of the emotion of it? Because I was thinking of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they say. They say
Yeah.
it imprints
Okay.
fear and that kind of thing imprints
So here's my
stronger.
story. I guess first making a confession. If you can see if you were with me in the middle of my hands here, I've got scars. Okay. So the only time I got really drunk, because my dad, as I said, was a chronic, like you say, the 40 liter thing. My dad, when I was a kid, used to take us into the liquor store with one of those push carts, and we'd come out and it would be overflowing. And we would have 2, 3, 4 day drunk fest. Like there'd be 40, 50 people in my house. I didn't know half of them. And that would all be gone in a few days. And so when you said 40, I went, you're not a big drinker. I tell your mom you weren't doing too much drinking there. But so I got drunk on my graduation night, and I never forget it because it's like the story's like yesterday. And I think that's what they say. It's about emotion. So I was wearing a velour top, and I had a buddy of mine. His name was Cliffy, had long hair, and we used to call him Rockstar Cliffy. And I think the only reason he liked me is because he wanted to cheat off my papers. And we used to hang out and play street hockey. And his dad was from Quebec, and they had pinball machines in the garage, and the pop shop. These pop. We drank pop, talk about sugar, and played pinball. But those were the days. But that's where I escaped after school. So here we am to my grad night, and so I guess what happened is my dad comes down to my room, and it's probably 2 a.m, and he finds me on my waterbed. I had back those days a waterbed, a single, and there was blood all over in glass. And so what had happened was, I guess my dad, they found my car in the driveway, and it was still running, and the door was open. So what had happened, I guess, was I stumbled from the car down the stairs to the lower level to get in the house. I couldn't find my keys, obviously, it's in the car. So I took one of those round Hoover vacuums and I threw it through my window and broke the big window. And then I went like this with my hands to get in, and of course, right through my glass shards, right through my hands, blood everywhere, collapsed on my bed. And the last part of the story is that I never forget this. My dad said, he came down, I guess, when he discovered me, and he said, son, I remember who's talking here. He said, son, I don't have to tell you anything. He said, I know how you're feeling. And he said, I know it'll be a lesson. And then he said, I love you. And I never remembered that last part until just before he died, when he told me he loved me again, because I always was beat up and stuff. I never really thought that he did. But it's funny, through reading your book and also learning to use my brain to find the truth about my thought patterns, there was good in that story. But I always used to see that story as a bad story. And so thank you for somehow getting us on that track to talk about getting drunk, because we got to do more of that. Hey, everybody, we got to do more of that show. It's time to celebrate. Let's change it up a little bit. So your book is amazing. So hold it up again, and we're going to full screen and just read out the title.
The Path 365, Daily Direction for Ladies, Mothers, Witches, and Others.
All right, so we're talking to Suzie Newell in Ohio there, and she is the author of that book. She is also a PhD and put in that book a lot of brain science. I have to say this, that isn't it true? I mean, I went through this, but when we come from trauma or dysfunction, and I learned that nobody really knows what the word trauma means. I'd like to know what you think, but I think it's an overused word. But in some of the research I did on brain science, because I'm interested in that, I found some studies about maltreatment. And maltreatment is, as a child growing up and you witness violence around you, that's a form of maltreatment. Or you're abused physically or mentally, that's maltreatment. So what I find interesting about it is that when you're talking about this, like, the word shame came to my mind. So I was always, people are always ashamed of their dysfunction. They don't all, shame and guilt are side by side in the brain, I think, as emotions. But shame doesn't end very well. That can lead us to suicide or other tough things, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what the breakthrough for me, everybody, about this book is, it's one of the first times I read something that helped me understand the why scientifically behind my shame. And and everybody, when you read the book, if it unlocks that one part, it's going to change your life. So I want to thank you for that, because now when somebody said, when people, they criticize you, or they, if you can't behave the way they do because your brain is wired differently from trauma, you tend to feel there's something wrong with you. But now I can understand that was put in me. That wasn't me. My brain didn't develop the way it should have. And so therefore it's got nothing to do with me.
Yeah, well, you made me think of like three things when you said that. One,
Sure.
well, first of all, like, for clarity for people, the book isn't actually neuroscientific in reading. Like, it
Okay.
has some science within it,
Yeah.
but it's very practically written.
Yeah.
And that was my goal.
Which is really, it's an
it is-
easy read that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super practical. So we talk a lot about neuroscience because both Tom and I are really fascinated with it, and it is the foundation for the coping mechanisms. But you don't need to know anything about neuroscience to follow the coping mechanisms. So
Yeah.
that's because people will say that in interviews all the time, and I'm like, but it is really easy to read.
Yeah. It is. It's basically like an owner's manual for me, and
for life. Yeah.
yeah. And
So
there's
then
something
the
every
second
day.
thing
Yeah.
that you said, and now I'm losing it, but it was you were talking about how it unlocks, and that's what I mean, that is what I'm most proud of, is that I feel like the book is there for you and your journey. It's not about my journey, it's not about anyone's journey. You get to create that path yourself, because every day is a question and you get to answer it. And
Yeah.
so through answering the questions, you really sort of form your opinions about who you want to be.
Yeah.
Sort of Harry Potter in that way.
I like that. And we'll get you in a minute to read a passage of that. And by the way, everybody, remember at the beginning of the show, I was telling you about, I was telling you about something that was going to happen on the show, Suzie. There's nothing going on here. We're going to watch Suzie's video in a minute, but it's the second video that, you're going to stay and watch. So anyway, I'm talking to myself here, Suzie. Too excited about your book. So all right, we're going to celebrate now. So everybody, how you can support Suzie. As authors, they have ideas, they write books, but they're not known. We need to help them be known. I want everybody, to get the book. I got one here. Read it, but also post a review on Amazon, Goodreads.com. What that actually does is, most of the publishers, the salespeople who work in the stores to stock the books, or they see something going on with the book. Also, it gets the word out. So I'm going to put a review up. This was brand new. An international review I wrote for you. So we're going to put it on screen. All right. Congratulations. And
Thank you.
so I'm just going to read it. I know I blocked you out there, but review title Brain Behavior. I covered it up on my logo, but author Suzie Newell's book is well written, creatively, and breakthrough for seekers looking for answers and why the past control our future. Breakthrough is through the lens of brain science. I love the format. Each page explains a single word of concept, unravels the truth about the brain, and gives an action to change behavior. Ultimately, changing behavior can change your brain. The book is well researched, written, illustrated, creating a fun, memorable experience page by page. I highly recommend it. And so that is posted on Amazon. Everybody, you can go see it. So congratulations. I know you're getting lots of reviews. Put out a little bit of fireworks there to celebrate with you. And I wanted to have that in the show so that, you can use this as a way to tell people, let's check this book out. I want to watch a video with you. Is it okay if we share the screen for a minute? All right. Everybody, we're watching the first video, not the second one, the first one. This is a video on YouTube. I'll put it in the show notes. And so stand by. We're going to start that. Just a couple minutes. All right. So here we go.
There's a storyline in it that has these badass witches, and they're called the Bene Gesserit, and they have this mantra called the Litany against fear. I'm going to read it for you. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. So this struck me really hard at an impressionable age, and I made it my own personal mantra. And I think that this is the reason that I've been able to overcome so many fears. So why is that? What is it about fear? The neuroscience behind fear is complicated, as neurosciences want to be, but I'm going to bust it down for you. So you learn fear from your community or from your family or from your culture or from experiences. Some of these fears are super useful, like don't pet the lion in the zoo. Other fears are irrational, like be afraid of things that are different from you. But all of these fears land in this primitive part of your brain where you can react without thinking. So that's instinct, right? That's where fear lands. It lands in this instinctual, primitive part of your brain. And that's great. Like 10,000 years ago, when you see a saber-toothed tiger, you go, oh, and you run. Instead of looking at the saber-toothed tiger and processing, oh, those teeth are really big and I think I should run, and I have saves you a whole bunch of time in an emergency.
Okay, I'm just going to bring us back on here and take that off the screen. I mean, first of all, it's a cool video. Well done. There's so many neat things there, but tell us about this. I kind of smiled inside, but I got it when you said about don't pet the lion in the zoo. But the truth is, I think back as a child, you don't have that rational brain to say that's not a good thing to do, so you go do it. But tell us about fear. I think fear is an emotion, and what I was fascinated by is when you said it's learned. And so, yeah, tell us more about what we just saw.
Well, I think that we're hardwired to be afraid of things we don't understand and that are different from us. And so one of the things that, we're exposed to so many things now, and everything is different than your circle, right?
Yeah.
So you can be afraid of everything and everyone all the time because the world has gotten increasingly smaller. In other words, you have exposure to things that are different from you a lot more than you would have 10,000 years ago. And so my thing is always, people say, trust your gut. I say, don't trust your gut. Don't trust your gut. Question your gut every time, because that is that fear. That is that instinct. That is run from the saber-toothed tiger. Yep. But you're not looking at a saber-toothed tiger. So look at what it is that you're afraid of and try to pull it out of this primitive part and put it into your frontal brain and allow you to process through that. Don't tell you what to think. I just tell you to question it.
Yeah. This is interesting. I'm fascinated. We could talk for another show on this, but this part about the I didn't learn this until later in life through my own discoveries. But when we're children, I understand that part of the brain you're referring to about rationalizing or thinking. Like it's almost like you pause before you react and you say, "Let me look at that tiger. Oh, look, it's a kitty. It's not." But
Mm-hmm.
we don't have the use of that when we're younger. So I think it's true that a lot what we hear, everything around us just gets put into us, and it's like we believe it. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to share this with you that in my career, my first role as a CEO, chief executive officer of a company was at age 31. So I moved fast in my career. I just was blessed, but I also realized that I was addicted to work because of my unresolved trauma from childhood. So I was really chasing self-worth instead of success. Unraveled all that. But I would sit in a room and I would see people across from me. And what my brain was telling me about what they were was completely different. So it's almost like that tiger thing. It's like I could be looking at the same tiger
Yeah.
you're looking to, and they've got their mouth open with their claws like this, with blood dripping off their teeth, and I go like shit. They're gonna come and tear me apart, and then So this was defining or shaping how I would deal with people, difficult people. And what I finally realized is that certain things like the tiger became my father. And so just
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that, about how this is such a break for everybody in the book that you're teaching us, but that we see the world sometimes not the way it really is unless we do something different. Tell us more about that.
Well, all the way through it, we talk about in fact, it's the third entry that tells us that you need to stop listening to, and we call it, can I swear? Do we swear in this? I
Yeah,
don't remember.
sure. Yeah,
Okay,
go ahead.
we call her that bitch in the head,
Uh-huh. Why
and
don't you
it's the bitch in the
pull the
head.
third entry up and just read
All
it?
right.
Hold the book up a bit
Okay.
when you I'm actually everybody, I got my own copy here too. No, 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 no.
So the first section is, and really, you talk about overused. I feel like gratitude is overused,
Mm,
but it is really foundational for me because it changes your perspective on everything and changes the way your brain reacts to things.
that's a pretty
So
nice
that's
drawing too.
gratitude. Yeah, yeah, that's Frankie Tyrone. I try to give him
Nice.
credit wherever I can.
Way to go,
So
Frankie.
that's open your heart. Compassion is revolutionary,
Yeah.
and so, do you want me to read it? Just read it? Is
Yeah,
that what I'm
sure.
doing?
Yeah.
Okay. In order to heal from our history of trauma or abuse, we have to be open. The anxiety and pain are byproducts of fighting. The internal war we feel flares up when we are shut down, living in fear, and listening to that voice in our heads. Tell that bitch to shut the hell up. She isn't welcome here.
Okay, pause
Now,
for a
let's
minute.
something else.
Just hold
Okay,
on.
yeah.
We're gonna have
So
some
that was
fun.
the whole
So
point.
we're gonna have fun. So now we're gonna read together. So I'm on the same page here in the book, everybody. So you got to get it too. Now let something else flow in. Let it replace the constant negativity. Compassion for yourself and others is a good place to start. It softens the edges, begins the healing. Picture your heart as a vessel. Pour only elixir from the fountains of life into it. Now you continue.
Clean out all the pain and negativity. You are on a journey now, and you no longer do bad things. Being wrong is natural. You learn how to improve and move forward. This is only possible if you're willing to learn, willing to be open to all the possibilities, and willing to take a leap of faith and be honest with yourself.
And then there's
Do
a
you want
little
the intent?
intent. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, intention.
Yeah.
What negativity keeps your heart from truly being open to others?
I love it. That's so good. So everybody, that gives you a sense of what you get in this book. There's significant value, but I love how it is. I can read this. Takes me a moment, and I think what I'm beginning to get here too is by pouring in every day positivity or things. I'm basically rewiring also,
Right.
rewiring my brain to think differently and developing new skills. Right,
Right.
which
Well,
is
and that's my joke about this particular entry is the reason I like to share it is it's my practical sense. Tell that bitch to shut up. And then it's also that kind of little bit of hippie. And if
yeah,
you're uncomfortable with either one of those, that's okay. Give it 365 entries. You know, like they have a lot of different flavor to them,
yeah.
and you'll hone into some of them really closely and be able to identify. And it takes a long time,
Yeah.
just like a stroke victim, to reshape your brain.
No, that's brilliant. And everybody, I'm just going to say this about the what you said about sort of it's a bit of a dark humor and sometimes just humor. But when many people who follow me know I did a TED talk. I had a brain injury in 2018. I fell in a bathtub. I was doing a 2-day bike ride for cancer, and well, we're going to keep the spotlight on you. But this story came up that so I was so sick, and then I went into depression. I had suicidal ideation. My first bout with these things, and 4 years now, I'm still recovering. I'm still working through some things, but I remember my coach for my TED talk said, because my talk was called "How Leaders Can Lift the Stigma of Mental Health," and I almost quit. Like honestly, Susie, I was so sick, my memory loss, and so he says you got to have some humor in there. And so I started researching TED Talks, and what I realized is that I was taught, and I put humor in there, is that humor allows us to breathe. Reading sometimes things that are intense where our backs against the chair, like in the theater, we can't wait, but we got to breathe. So humor just lets everybody, lets you release and breathe, kind of chuckle, and then you can come back and go deeper. So I just love how you've done that, because it's actually a pretty remarkable way to get guys like me and all your fans to keep moving through this. So way to go. Now, I want to just share another video with you. We've been talking about this video. Oh my goodness. Okay, we can't whisper now. We have to be really true. So, all right. So, Susie, this is a video I found in just kind of producing the show, and yeah. So it's a little bit about you, and so I'm going to play it. Will you watch it with me?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Now we're not gonna tell people what's going on in the video, but I have to say to everybody that I'm very vulnerable in sharing this video, because you're going to recognize something about it. Let's watch it, and then let's talk about the video and how it connects to this, what I think is life-changing book. So stand by here. Hey, Susie, it's Tom. I just got off the mic, and the show is fabulous, incredible. I've done 240 shows, and I think without mincing words, I'd say that's in the top 5%. And I want to share with you a little story. And this might be a story that's going to either shock you, or you're going to laugh, or you're going to get angry. And I know you've made the same journey I did. So I just going to be right up front and tell you, because I don't want you waiting, that I was so excited I went back to watch what we did, and it wasn't recorded. Okay, we're going to stop that. All right, I'm just going to let everybody into this. You knew coming into the show today that this is our third time doing this show, and so you knew that, and I don't think the audience understood that. So this is the third time we've been trying to do this show, everybody. So let me continue on with the video, and then I'll get you to chime in on it. Here we go. And I thought about it, and I just literally was in disbelief. And I thought, I've been struggling for the last 10 minutes since you left, saying, what am I going to tell this lady? I don't think I ever get her back to do the show. And I've never had this happen with anybody on my show. In fact, we've had some technical issues, but never to the extent of what's happened with you. So, okay, so I'm going to chime in here. All right, everybody. So this is obviously, so what happened was after the show taping, I was horrified. And so I'm just going to fill in some of the details that people don't know. But Susie, you and I did a live stream of this show on about a month ago. And there was a technical issue in it, so it didn't turn out well. And so I had you come back again. I think it was a couple of weeks later, and you were awesome. And then, we did it again, and there was another issue. And so that was the moment where I basically, when I discovered it, you had just left the show, and when I discovered it, I went, holy shit. And I literally was ruminating. I was so embarrassed as a host. And I even was thinking up a way to tell a white lie, or honestly, I thought maybe I just won't call you. I'll just let it go away. So let's keep going back into this and continue the video. So let me just put it on there and bring it back on the screen. You know, my old self would get into the shame, and I don't think I would ever do this, but I think out of this could come a silver lining, an idea I have. If you are even going to give me an extra hour of your time. I thought I lost you. I was thinking maybe God meant this to happen. Maybe in some way this was meant to happen with you, so that we can maybe create an even more credible show. But I was going to write you an email and just tell you, and I thought, there's no way. I can't even write or type right now. So this is literally right after. Here, I only got one light on, which is intended to create a shadow on the other side of my face about how I might be feeling. But we know each other's story and the resilience behind each other. And when I find somebody that I feel is, can really understand and relate, that opens me up to share. And so I sat here for 10 minutes and I flipped through your book. And maybe this is something that we can weave into the show. Maybe I can put it at the end. I can clip part of this, put it at the end. And okay, I'm going to bring you back on there. So just as you're seeing this now, when I first got back to you and told you about what had happened on the show, tell us truthfully, what were you thinking? Were you angry? Were you frustrated?
No, not at all. I felt badly for you. I was like, oh my gosh, Tom, like I am such an ADD person. Like I would do something like that and not think twice about it. So it's a great thing being like me my whole life. I'm very understanding of that kind of stuff.
If I go back to that original letter you wrote and thinking about the 40 ounce and the old you, do you think you'd be reacting differently?
Back then, I wouldn't be on the show, so it's so hard to say. Okay. You know what I mean? Okay. I would be like, back then I was just such a disaster.
That's probably true after 40 ounces. You probably even know what day it is. You'd probably be like, let's do it again.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to just talk for a few more minutes on this. Again, everybody, this is totally important. If you saw in that last clip of the scene, I blinked and my eyes bugged out and stuff. So right about then, my nervous system is highly elevated, Suzie, because a lot of people don't know, but I have a photophobia, light sensitivity from my concussion, and I have a post-concussion convergence issue. So my eyes don't move from right to left easily. In fact, they pretty much don't. So I have to really work hard. I have a bit of double vision, and you wouldn't know it. But as I was recording this, I was totally stressed. And you could see, it was almost like my younger brother has Tourette syndrome. It's almost like you could see a little bit of that coming out of my emotion. So everybody, I want you to live through this. I was facing the heightened level of fear, embarrassment, shame, guilt, every emotion you could think, asking myself, my voice in my head that is always there saying, what am I going to tell this amazing lady about what an idiot I was? How am I going to do this? And what I would normally do is I would just have said, screw it. I would just have not even dealt with it. So let's go a little bit further in the video. It can create this. I think sometimes things like this go viral because you just don't expect it. So I went through your book here and I went to page 39. Let's turn to page 39 and stop there. And it says, speak your truth. It'll help you. It'll help them. This isn't preaching. This is sharing. This is allowing yourself the freedom to tell yourself other people feel the same way that you do or have been through a similar experience. This is how we heal. This is how we bring people together. This is true bonding. When you're able to speak your truth, people know you're sincere. This is how you help them. This is how you help them. This is how you help yourself. Everyone responds to that kind of vulnerability and honesty. It shines through about the bullshit. Intention. What is your truth today? How can you work towards more serenity? So I'm just going to talk at you a little bit and give you some insight that I feel awful right now, and it's one of the things I've struggled with all my life is there's two types of people that kind of say, it happened. And by the way, when you do hour-long even shows, I did a show in Hollywood for the first time in 2017 when my book went out. Oops. And we were there a whole day, and you're having take after take after take after take, and so you kind of expect that, but my show is not like that because I have such a unique ability for storytelling, and the guests are just so authentic, like you. We just like we're having coffee. So I want to go back a little bit and talk to you a bit more, because you're in the medical community, about my this is not an excuse, but I'm going to tell you the truth. Okay, I'm just going to stop the sharing there. Bring us back. Oops. Bring us both back on screen here. All right, we're back. Now I'm going to shut up for a minute. I just want you to let it all. Whatever you're thinking, talk to me about what you just saw.
Well, I mean, there's two things. One, I just appreciated that you used my book. That was so touching to me. Like, it really meant a lot. And two, I didn't care at all. I mean, this is life. It doesn't.
Yep.
This is not the end all be all of anything. So
Totally.
I mean, and you're amazingly complimentary, and it also brings me back to, honestly, what I think is missing in motivational. I'm like a crossover motivational person. I'm not necessarily motivational. I'm much more mind, body, spirit, but I
Yeah.
feel like what you do is go all the way and allow for that kind of vulnerability within a professional workspace. I mean, obviously, you're not going to be like every day, here's some amazing truth about me. People would be like, okay, you can shut up now. But allowing for people to make mistakes and allowing for them to, I just think that is what's missing is the response of. And I mean, I could go on all day about this, right? I work as a nurse anesthesiologist in an environment that traditionally is not a forgiving environment, right?
Yeah.
So I have surgeons, and there's a lot of really good surgeons out there, so I'm not making a general statement, but there are some surgeons who are classically violent and angry and are clearly have daddy issues. So
They need this.
yeah, they need my book. That's right.
Hey, you guys go get
Lot
this. Or she's
Right.
gonna hit you over the head with it.
So I've spent most of my life being a woman, being in that environment, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, this is nothing to me. It was nothing. And and it broke my heart how much you took it to heart, because I was like,
So everybody, what really
me,
happened was, I said, what really happened is after I told Suzie about it, she was so forgiven and about it. But this is where I want to sort of tie this all together, because you are humble right now. Step into your greatness, and I think you said to me, you when we knew about the screw up, it's still, let's put it this way, still, even up to you coming here today, I still had that voice in my head a little bit. But I want to show you something. We got another book here that in my life, and in most people who come from those backgrounds where there's some degree of trauma, we call it, your book really helps us understand that how do I say this? When I grew up, I wasn't taught. When you're born, your neurons in your head, your memory neurons are little vessels that wire emotions and feelings, everybody. So everything you hear, your brain basically logs it, and then it goes back to it, and it really just thinks and uses that to tell you what's going on in your current reality. But Suzie, I didn't grow up learning how to be kind or how to love people or the truth about who I really was. In fact, it was all the opposite. And it wasn't until my brain injury that I found a book. And no, it wasn't your book. But after being a corporate executive, CEO type guy, and then 10 years as my own education company, teacher or whatever, after everything, I turned to this book, the Holy Bible. And what's scary to me is I was baptized Catholic and, Christianity, all that stuff, and I denied faith. But I got to a point in my life where everything you've taught us today and you've helped us figure out, I didn't have a way forward. I didn't know any of what you've taught in this book. So the only other book was this one. I said, well, what the hell? I'm just going to try this one. And what it taught me in here is I shouldn't say that, right? Hell, you're right. But Freudian slip. But what this book taught me is it taught me how to love. It's basically a book of 40 or 50 stories written about Jesus Christ, who he was. It taught me how to be kind, how to love, how to forgive, how to know that somebody's out there holding my hand, loving myself. And I think that's really what I'm getting at with why I think this is one of the greatest books I've read, in that there's no other book that had that impact on me. But when that real thing happened with my show, I turned to this book and I found something in it that gave me the courage to deal with you again. And I'm glad I did, because I want you in my life that way. And so everybody, what this book's going to do is, I'm not I could compare it to the Bible, and you're probably going to say, okay, all right, you're telling me a little off there. But what I'm really trying to say, to you is, I love you and your stories, that you've got to know what you've done here. When one person, and there'll be many, many more that won't tell you what I told you. Everybody, when one person reads this and can use it as courage to move forward through something painful, what I'm going to know now is, and this is the last thing I'll say, then I'll let you talk to me. Now that I was able to deal with this and confront you with my whole self, not run away from it like I've done all my life. And next time my brain's going to say, wait a minute, stop, read page, whatever. You've done this. You've done this before. And that's what the power of this book is, everybody, is that you're going to find things in it where you're going to say, I'm going to do that because I've got so much pain right now. And you're going to, oh man, look at what happened. And the next time that pain comes, you're going to do it again. You're going to develop that habit. So talk to me about what I just told you.
Well, that's overwhelming and like way too much credit. So thank you so much.
No, you can be overwhelmed. You can be overwhelmed. I'm the one who is putting you on the spot, but you need to know.
It's very, very, very kind. And what I love, and what you've pointed out is that, anybody can get there. Anybody, it doesn't matter how you do it. The fact that you have Christianity and the Bible that works for you is the best thing. I love that. Like, my spiritual path is so important to me, and everybody can get there, but it's all about, how do you create that mindset? How do you
Yeah.
put that in there? And you can do that through meditation. You can believe in science, you can believe in, whatever it is, but you have to have that same passion that you just showed.
That's right.
And I choose a spiritual path because it works for me, but other people don't have to. And I don't create the spiritual path.
Of course not.
I just tell you to go there.
And I think that's really where, in my own multidimensional thought patterns, that's really what I just came up with this. I was thinking, like, we won't get into religion, but so many people, let's put it this way. If somebody says to me, do you believe God exists? If I use my logical brain, I'm going to say, well, I've never met him. But I think the right question is to say, do you believe in what the cross represents? And when I understood what the cross represents, and how in my world, I believe Christ died on that cross for certain reasons to help me. But this took me one step further in my thinking, this whole conversation about the power of the brain. So just stay with me on this. That what I understand now from you and reading this book and some other things I've read is that we have the power to attach a different meaning to a thought. We have the power to choose to believe in something or not. And it's so simple. It's so simple to me. But listen. If when I was at home and I was going through the violence and things in my home, if I could find solace in even a figure like Christ and a cross, and like, seriously, when I sit sometimes and I pray or I just talk and I say, just be with me right now, I now can start to almost see a hand on my shoulder. It's remarkable how through neuroplasticity and constant exercises of thinking and focusing on something like this, I'm starting to feel it. So all of a sudden I can believe it. And when I believe it, I go, it doesn't matter what Suzie thinks of me. It doesn't matter what my pastor.
Yes.
I believe that I'm not alone. I believe I'm enough. And I think that's really what I'll end on. That is, that's the power of your book and the whole science stuff. It's true. We can decide for ourselves, make the choice. Just like all you folks out there, the 80-90% who have past trauma, which is really our tribe that we're helping you. You can believe the truth about yourself, and you can get rid of your BS stories. Just practice and do this.
Yeah. Yes,
All
right. Exactly. Thank you.
All right. On that note, we're going to do a couple things to honor you. So we're going to full screen me for just a moment as we wrap up a couple of awards here. So Suzie, you see that image on the screen there? That is what we call a challenge coin. They were created in World War II. When I created the show, I really was thinking of an award that created a community. And so soldiers would carry these to commit community to each other. And if you didn't have yours, I'd say, okay, you got to buy dinner. And today they're used around the world, first responders. So I had this minted, hand painted, and crafted. The back is beautiful. It's actually the hero's journey narrative illustrated. And so today you're being inducted into the Quiet Warrior community. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right. And now these are hard to get. As you know, I push people hard to get on the show and be authentic, about 40 a year. So you'll be receiving this. And the last thing I'll do is read to you 4 what I call leadership words. I write these down as you're talking. I don't script them. First one is wisdom. And the wisdom that you have is incredible. And it was obtained, everybody, through that story, which makes it believable and credible. 2 is trailblazer. They say the first one to the wall gets bloody. So you're blazing a trail with what you're doing here, teaching people to focus on not just behavior, but also on think about how your brain works and do these simple things. 3 is no pun, heroin. I don't mean drugs, but the hero's journey narrative is when you go through difficult things, you come back and after learning and you change people's lives. And finally, influencer. I think you know that, but everybody, you need to find Suzie's body of work. So on that note, where do we find you? Where do we get that?
I have a website, thepath365.com, and I am on every social media platform. Well, not every, but like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, thepath365.com. Or not .com, thepath365.
Awesome. We'll put that all in the show notes, everybody. A little treat for you, shameless plug, but I've been through my journey through mental illness and all those things. I'm coming on the other side. I'm thinking about starting another podcast. Nobody's ever heard the intro, outro music, but can I tease you and play the intro music?
Yeah.
Because I do want your first reaction. So we're going to have you on the screen visually. Let's see if I can do this. I believe it's this one. Okay, so here we go. So everybody, the idea was I grew up as a kid with different genres of music. And of course, one of them was heavy metal, and I had country and all this. But there's something about the heavy metal genre, and when I listened to the words, it had meaning. And so I said to my guy, I said, okay, I want you to create something that makes it could resemble how I feel if I have mental illness, if I have all these traumatic thoughts in my head. And somewhere in there, I want you to listen for the primal scream. So here we go.
Welcome to the Heavy Mental Health Show. And now, here to help teach leaders how to lift the stigma of mental health, your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right, never heard before on the Quiet. What do you think? What's your first reaction?
Oh, I love it. First of all, I love the way he says your name, Dutta. But that scream is awesome. It's so good, so good.
Yeah, apparently there's 7 layers of he's a DJ. There's 7 layers of sound on that, and it just turned out beautiful. The outro I'll send you to listen to another time. Let's just wrap up. We'll let you have the last word. Where can people get the book and be in touch with you?
Amazon and on my website, and also it's available on Facebook and Instagram, the Path365. So I have a contact sheet on the path365.com if you are reaching out for speaking opportunities or anything like that.
Fantastic, everybody. And again, the book is The Path, and you want to get this and give it a review, post on Amazon, goodreads.com, and find that true purpose, like is what Suzie's taught us here, and turn it into a passion. Live the life that you deserve and desire. Suzie, thanks for being here. It's been quite something.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it has been. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.